Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Helen and I am one of your co-hosts for Scoro's webinar today.
Yes, hello, and I'm Sander. So Helen and I are delighted to be talking to you today about revenue forecasting, especially now that we're in the kind of beginning of the year and many of us are hopefully thinking about this. So kind of over the next hour, we'll be sharing some of the insights, what we've seen and experienced ourselves, what we have heard, and yeah, some tips and thinking to help give you a better grip on forecasting. So hopefully you'll be set up for a successful year ahead.
This webinar is being recorded live, so we'll wait for just a minute to give people a chance to join. Whilst we do that, I wanted to congratulate everyone for getting to the end of January. For those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, it is one of the coldest and darkest months of the year. So the light of spring is just around the corner. And a little fun fact about the 31st of January. Sander, did you know that on this day in 1961, the first primate was sent into space? He was a chimpanzee called Ham.
I didn't, but I see this as being super relevant for the discussion today. So thank you for that.
Well, look, of course. Look, when this comes up in a pub quiz, you're going to thank me, okay?
I will remember you. Yeah.
Let's move on to introductions. As I said, my name is Helen, and I am a member of the onboarding team here at Scoro. So I work with customers who are just getting started with Scoro and help them get all set up to go live successfully with their teams. And a bit of backstory about me. Before I joined Scoro, I was a customer of Scoro. I had a web development agency and I was the person who implemented Scoro for my team. And it really was a game changer for us. So much so that after I sold my agency, I decided to join the amazing team here.
And we are glad to have you. But yeah, as said, I'm Sander. I'm a product manager here at Scoro, and like my focus is all about making the kind of financial side of Scoro work. And of course, that includes things such as providing better visibility and revenues, but like more broadly, that you would truly understand the monetary value of your time and how to kind of manage that both in the past and in the future. So like during my time here, I've had the chance to speak with many companies in the field. So yeah, excited to share some of the kind of knowledge I've heard here today.
Amazing. We'll kick things off with a quick poll. So you'll shortly, I hope, see a pop-up on your screen. We'd love to know, how confident are you feeling with your current revenue forecast? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, like maybe you don't even have one, 5 being the highest, you have full confidence. I'll give everyone just a few more seconds to add their choices, and then we will share the results. Okay, and 3, 2, 1. And results are in. So the bulk of people are in this middle section over here. So 36% using it, but it needs improvement. 32% seems okay. I'm not sure if I'm doing it well. No one is fully confident yet. A small number of people don't have one at all. So I'm really, really hopeful that actually after today's webinar, we'll be able to nudge you a little bit further up that scale. So on to the agenda.
Yes. So let's go through what's in it, what's in the store for us today. So over the next hour, we'll be discussing how revenue forecasting works for agencies and consultancies. And we'll be covering what is revenue forecasting in the first place, how to define it, Why is it important for a company, and especially a services company, to focus on it? What are the different approaches you can take to forecast? What are some of the challenges we've seen businesses run into? And how can a work management software such as Scoro help with all this? And of course, we will finish off the webinar with a questions and answers round. So please submit your questions with the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. And yeah, your questions will just be visible to us. They're not automatically publicly posted. And yeah, if we run out of time to answer everyone's questions, we will get back to you afterwards. So yeah, please don't ask questions anonymously, because then we just won't know who to respond to.
It does make it a bit more difficult, doesn't it, to reply if we don't know who asked it. And just to build on that, so today won't be a detailed demo of how Scoro's revenue report works. However, we will be covering it in a little bit of detail, but we have a dedicated demo coming up, which will be a deep dive into this on Tuesday, the 13th of February, 3 p.m. GMT. We will send you the link to register for that webinar, along with the recording to this webinar in the follow-up email. So you will definitely have a chance to join in on that or watch it on demand afterwards if you'd like. Cool. I think we are about ready to start.
Yes, I think so. So let's jump into it then. And let's start by just talking about what revenue forecasting is and what do we mean by it. So, at its core, revenue forecasting is the, let's say, strategic art, or you could call it science, of estimating your agency's future income. And by understanding the kind of revenue landscape ahead, you gain the power to make really informed decisions, allocate your resources, and most importantly, ensure the sustainability of your agency. And in the end, the revenue forecast is still an estimate on how much money you will make in a future period. And that estimate is, should be, at least hopefully, based on some sort of actual data, right? And not just the owner's gut feel.
Mm-hmm. In my decade of running an agency, I can't tell you just how many people base their projections off gut feel. And I know, because I was one of those people. And that is potentially to be expected, right? We, a lot of owners come from technical backgrounds, design backgrounds, etc. We're not all from financial backgrounds. And so you do end up kind of, looking at the top line, P&L statement of previous months and using your gut feel to come up with, shall we say, some hopeful assumptions.
Yeah. That is such a common scenario, and most of us aren't finance professionals, and you can't always get lucky, and things will work out how you hope they would. But I think you don't really want to be leaving that to chance too much,
No,
right?
absolutely
Yeah.
not. Yeah, having confidence in your revenue forecast is so important, as an owner or leadership in a business. It is really the difference between being able to sleep well at night and actually maybe having to stay up a bit later at night because you can foresee that there are going to be some issues and you want to jump on them before they become issues.
Yeah, exactly. All right, but as Helen said, it's really important. So let's take a deeper dive into the reasons why it's important. And yeah, in general, of course, forecasting is important for informed decision making, but there are various decisions you need to make in your business. So let's go through the kind of most important ones that we see popping up again and again. So the first one is kind of probably the most obvious one, right? So just financial management, budgeting. So forecasting is frequently used as the sort of a goal or target setting practice to kind of set reasonable estimates of how much should the company earn throughout the period. And then later to be able to compare the actual results to the forecast. But of course, we're talking about cash flow management here, which is important to be to be able to understand where there's enough cash to pay the salaries, keep your business afloat, etc. But also general financial budgeting, meaning that you need to understand how much are you going to earn in future periods to understand how much you can spend, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how can you decide whether you can afford to sponsor some big event that's coming up or get a bigger office space, if you can't understand your future revenues? And I'm not just talking about cash in the bank right now, but actually how much will you have in future to be able to afford those things ongoing?
Yeah. And the other kind of big area we see is like just having a grip on your sales tactics or like direct the sales process in general, right? So where do you focus your energy? What sort of decisions you need to make, right? So first of all, of course, you need to use the forecast to get an overview of your sales pipeline. Like where do you expect
Hmm.
peaks and drops to happen when looking at incoming business? You probably want to try to cover the low periods, maybe by some very aggressive sales tactics. Perhaps you need to review your pricing or drop the prices here and there, or even take in like work that you normally wouldn't, right?
Yeah, we've all done it. Your sales tactics will vary hugely depending on what your pipeline is looking like, right? If you can look forward and know that it's looking very healthy, then you can be more selective, take on the nice projects. If it's not looking so healthy, beggars can't always be choosers.
Yeah, exactly. And the third kind of big area is resource planning, right? And like, yeah,
Hmm.
a revenue forecast to really kind of understand your probable staffing needs in the future. So this has been a big one when talking to clients, right? So,
Hmm.
and like because a proper forecast correlates with your resource needs quite
Yeah,
nicely, right? And it helps to determine whether you're like overutilized, underutilized in certain periods.
yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, so this is definitely the third kind of big topic would like to highlight here.
Super important. And I think like underrated, like it's not necessarily the obvious one that springs to mind.
Yeah, exactly. But let's switch this conversation around. So we've talked about the benefits, but Helen, you've been an agency owner before. So what happened when you were not forecasting properly and just like going by your gut? So can you share some of your kind of experiences?
Yeah, happily. Uh, okay, happily is the wrong word because when I was basing things on gut feel, it did not end up in happy situations. Um, so yeah, when we didn't have our kind of proper forecasting and processes in place, we just found ourselves making like really focused on the short term and being quite reactive, leading to quite a lot of unprofitable decisions. So as an example, we landed a few really big projects in a short space of time. I think it was like the same week. And I had been so focused on winning these deals, I hadn't fully scoped out, okay, what resource are we going to need over the forthcoming months to, actually earn this review and deliver the work. Turned out we were, short a back-end developer that we needed, in order to meet all the deadlines that I had committed to with these clients. So I had to hire a very expensive last-minute freelancer, which initially seemed that would kind of get us through okay, but this freelancer did not really understand our infrastructure, our standards, our processes. So our in-house team had to spend time that they did not have because they were so busy delivering the other work, working with this guy to try and get him up to speed. And I mean, in the end, we kind of went a little bit over break even, but it was not a happy experience and it was certainly not a profitable experience. And, the whole team was pretty burned out towards the end.
So if you'd had more visibility at the time of the revenues to come in, or the resource it would take to deliver the work, like do you think you could have prevented this at that time?
Yeah, like 100%. And, I'm not saying that we would have necessarily hired another permanent employee because maybe the future revenue wouldn't have warranted it, but at least we could have sought out a freelancer earlier, got them up to speed to hit the ground running earlier, or I could have better managed the sales process and those client expectations so that we weren't starting two new projects at the same time, but we were staggering them better. Um, and you know, the joys of working in a project-based business model. Of course, that's the example where you have too much on in one go. And the converse of that is that you find yourself in the opposite scenario where, you've not got enough work on. And so, following on from this same example, so focused now on, previously I've been focused on winning the deals. Then I was focused on, oh my God, how are we going to do all this work in time? And then I'm in a situation where my developers are sitting around and not able to earn any money because we haven't got the projects in soon enough. So I'm worrying, do we have enough cash to see us through, these dry months? And, if I could have had visibility of that drop in revenue earlier rather than being so focused on making all these reactive decisions, then I could have got sign off on some maintenance projects from existing clients. I could have easily bought the work in earlier. But anyway, those early stages of business were a tough learning curve.
Yeah, you can really hear the pain like through
The pain is real, Sander. The pain is real.
All right, but let's get you out of your pain then and move on to some more like positive topics on how you can forecast your revenues. And well, naturally, you can't never like 100% predict the future, but you can get a lot closer with the right approach and the right data in place, right? And the first thing I would kind of first touch upon is that while revenue is always the money that is coming in, you can think of it in two distinct ways, right? We can think about revenue as cash, meaning the actual money that comes in by invoicing and actually having the money in the bank account in the end, right? And it's the thing that determines whether your business stays afloat or not, right? But we can also think about revenue as this earned revenue, meaning the revenue you have earned with like delivering some work and not necessarily have it in your bank account yet, right? So this concept is kind of widely used in accrual accounting, where you recognize the revenues after work has been delivered, not necessarily when it's been invoiced for, right? So these are like two different concepts we can really need to, I think, understand and differentiate because they all have each have their kind of place in here, right?
And I discovered the concept of earned revenue and accrual accounting the hard way. So we had an invoicing schedule for a huge project. The invoicing schedule was going completely as planned. We were getting buckets of cash through. It was great. But the project got stuck. We went through not one, not two, not three. We went through 16 rounds of design revisions before we got sign off to start the web build. And so we had collected, I don't know, let's say 75% of the total project value. We'd only actually delivered 20% of what we committed to. So I very quickly went from a place of thinking, oh, the business is doing very well, we have all this money, we're being super profitable, to very carefully having to watch every single penny in the bank to make sure that we could continue to pay everyone's wages to deliver the rest of the project. So after that, I very, very quickly implemented accrual accounting alongside, of course, cash flow management.
Yeah, but that sounds like you had a great lesson, right? You
Yeah.
learned a lot from that experience, right?
Oh, yes.
But of course, like both are important and each one has their kind of benefits and downsides. So if we look at cash as revenue, I mean, cash is king ultimately in the end, right? So you need to have it in the bank account to keep your business afloat, right? But just focusing on invoices and invoicing schedules like it doesn't really paint you a picture of the efficiency of the company and its kind of ability to earn money by continuously delivering work, right? Because kind of invoices and receipts, they can kind of happen far and in between depending on how you've set up your invoicing schedules, right? So as opposed to that kind of if you use earned revenue as the basis, I mean, you can be sure pretty much that this is a lot more connected to your actual kind of plans and the work you're delivering. So it's in its nature, it's more like much more operational and like connected to your resources, project plans. As you know, the future earned revenues are pretty much calculated like based on what is actually planned and what is being delivered, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, but of course, the downside to this is that you can never be 100% sure that the money will reach you in time, or if the client's going to pay up, of course. Of
Yeah.
course, like it's not like that often that problems like this appear, but we have to be very that, I mean, having cash in the bank is still, it feels nice and secure, right?
Yeah, yeah. And like you can't not stay on top of cash flow, right? You have to. Cash coming in is like oxygen in the body. If it dries up, you can't survive for long. But earned revenue does give you that operational insight. If you've got a 6-month project and you invoice for 50% upfront, then the cash base forecast does not like really give you any insight as to what you need to deliver it. It's way too blunt. I'd want to look at the fact that, okay, in month 1, we're delivering 5% of this project. In month 2, 10%, etc. What resources do we need to support that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense. And a lot of companies think about this in this way too. So both are important, but I would say, like, if you're a service company looking to kind of maximize your operational efficiency, therefore profitability, then you, I think, need to err on the side of kind of earned revenues more. And we see that with more mature companies that tend to gravitate towards that in their kind of daily analysis, even. Well, and like it's understandable if the danger of like going under is not that immediate, and
Hmm.
survival is not the main focus, but like getting to that efficiency is really what the aim is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes, but now that is clear, let's get into some more details without hopefully getting like too nerdy. So I'd like to explain a couple of kind of models or approaches to forecasting. And like if we're talking with agencies, consultancies, like we see those two approaches popping up here and there constantly. And yeah, so the first one, we've called it, let's say, top-down forecasting, which is kind of a broader approach, relying more on past performance and all sorts of external factors. Often this relates very much to setting like sales goals, setting the targets for the year ahead. And then there's, of course, the bottom-up type of forecasting, when you use like some more concrete data, some like, let's say, lower level data to build your projections up from the ground up, right? And in both cases, we're essentially talking about like trying to achieve a similar goal. I mean, like somehow trying to predict future generated revenues, but the approaches can be quite different, with kind of each one having their own positives and negatives.
Hmm. So, I mean, I used both of those approaches myself when I was running my agency, although to begin with, I didn't actually know the terms. I just kind of intuitively figured it out, I guess. But I think let's get nerdy, Sander. We like nerds here. And it'd be good to define exactly what we mean by those terms. I expect most people on this call will actually be familiar with the principles, but yeah, let's go into some more detail.
Yeah, sure. So let's start off with the top-down approach. So like as I said, you're approaching it from a higher level perspective, and you're not building it up from the ground up, rather kind of projecting a future revenue situation by relying on like historical performance and like some external factors like market situation, etc. Right? So in its simplest form, as you can see in the picture, you have some past data, right? And you're just trying to see where the trend takes you, right? So like the most obvious way is to have this mathematical approach. You can use some statistical models as kind of linear regression or moving average, or there are countless others. But like usually what we see is that you start off from like this mathematical kind of base that you have some past performance, so you can expect what will happen in the future, right? But of course, there usually are some kind of events or something that you can foresee in the future definitely happening, right? So it might be related to seasonality, for example, in your line of business. It might be that you're kind of stepping into a partnership of sorts. It also can be kind of a negative event, like for sure that one of your accounts is leaving soon or something. And all of those kind of affect the kind of revenue projection, or the trend line, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And if we kind of assess like how good or like what are the positives or negatives of this approach, then the main positive like thing about this is that you can model out quite a long-term view, right? Because you're relying on past data and those kind of external factors, but I mean, you don't need kind of very detailed and like data that extends very far, right? And it's also like if your business is quite stable, if you can expect what happens the next month, right, then it's totally fine. But like we have to consider that as the nature of this is not very detailed, it tends to be a lot less accurate. And of course, we're not thinking about our resources first here. Of course, like we can base some our like staffing a resource like decisions like based off this forecast, but we're not kind of like thinking about this as the first order of priority, right? So like there's not a strong connection between your resources and the forecast that you're like creating if you're following the top-down approach.
So it does sound like it can be informed by some good analysis of actual past data. But at the same time, like my problem with this is that I feel it can be too optimistic, right? Unless, taking your example, Xander, like a key account is going to leave. Unless you know for a fact that something bad is going to happen, when are you ever going to plan to just drop in a certain month? Like, oh, we just feel that in July things are going to get bad for us, so we're going to have a dip. You would never plan for that, right? That's just telling your team, hey, by the way, no one needs to sell anything or do any work in July. You just wouldn't do that. So for me, it's kind of like, you've got this fuzzy crystal ball and a wildly optimistic fortune teller. Like that's the impression I get.
Yeah, well, of course, it is probably a bit more technical than just looking at a crystal ball. But yeah, I agree with your overall sentiment and about the kind of optimistic nature of it. Yeah, it's about sending a message to your team as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, would you
Yeah,
send
yeah,
a
yeah.
message that, yeah, we expect to decrease our business over the next 3 quarters? Like, I don't think so, right? So the optimistic nature, yeah, is
Yeah.
kind of a thing you need to account for here. But and well, I think like in our line of business, or if we're looking at agency work, then this is probably not the place you should kind of stop. And there is another approach you should definitely consider. And of course, we've called it the bottom-up approach, and it involves building the forecast up from the ground up, as I already mentioned. And you need to be dependent on some sort of, let's say, concrete data here, like your available resources or booked resources, even better, right? So your won projects, perhaps project plans, or some possible deals in the sales pipeline. So so if we were just to kind of start building it up from the bottom, it would look something like this. So you have a project one here that is going to last for like some 4 months in this example, right? You have another project that seems to have a lot of work in April, but is lasting like for 5 months. And on top of that, you have your sales pipeline, right? So you're kind of like building your forecast up from the layers and like from the bottom up, ultimately kind of reaching the figures that are a lot more, let's say, like grounded in reality, in that sense that you have some specific evidence in your system or just like in general at hand to really kind of work with, right? And I mean, like this approach, of course, like the main like benefit of that is that it can be really accurate, especially in short term. Ideally, it would also be kind of like dynamically adjusting to changes, because as we know, like changes are a constant. And as it relies on kind of solid data, it might be a lot more trustworthy, of course, even considering those changes. And if your kind of business is very volatile, like things constantly move around, I mean, your forecast constantly moves around based on that as well. And a very important thing that like we think the bottom-up approach is very valuable is the strong connection to your resourcing, right? Because I mean, like think about it. If your forecast is driven by like your concrete project plans or how you've set up your, task or big milestones, then, that like just by looking at a financial report, you can get a really good understanding of your resource needs ahead. But again, the negatives of this is that it's more of a short-term view, of course, because like the data just runs out at some point, and you can't model out like years and years of forecast because you just like there's nothing to base this on, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be really expensive to maintain, like effort-wise, because there are a lot of data points, and like someone or something needs to manage this constantly.
So to summarize, top-down forecasting is more akin to setting higher level goals that can be informed by analysis of past data and past trends, taking into account any future events that might positively or negatively impact your ability to earn revenue. And the top-down approach, particularly good for that longer term view, but can be biased towards more optimistic targets. And then bottom up, here is where we are looking at the actual work that you have won, the actual deals in your pipeline. We are building up from that data to give us our forecasts. So it can be a lot more accurate and predictable. It's like our reality check as well. But it's only as good for as long as the data lasts. And, depending on your business model, that could be anywhere from like, I don't know, a few months, maybe up to 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, I mean, like both of them have their negative sides, but if we were to kind of combine those two approaches, you would get a lot more of a robust forecast that you can kind of create, as you would kind of cancel out the weaknesses, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if we just look at this example, I mean, here's a monthly overview of the generated revenues, as you can see, and for the past 2 months, we've been on steady track, and if we were to project future based on that, I mean, naturally, you'd want to base, longer term projections off a longer time period than 2 months, but, we just
Yeah.
ran out of screen real estate here. Then, this is what you can optimistically forecast for the coming periods. But, let's say we have actually won some contracts, we have something in the pipeline, and we add that into the picture, right? Then we can kind of immediately start spotting some problems here and there, right?
Yeah. So June, problem, not enough work. Also, April, that's a problem as well. It might be a good problem, but if you've got too much work on and not enough resource to deliver it, then you can easily end up, missing deadlines, compromising on quality, upsetting your customers. So yeah, still something that needs to be dealt with in advance.
Yeah. But again, like the point I want to stress here is that like you wouldn't get as good of a picture by looking at either of those. I mean, if you would just rely on the bottom up part, I mean, your forecast would taper down here anyway because you just run out of data. And so like by having this kind of higher level goal, you would kind of see where the business should take you, or like at least like what is the goal that we would like be hitting or hopefully hitting. And you wouldn't get to that point by just looking at either one, like by combining them. Yeah, it's a really kind of a robust approach to forecasting. And another fun way of looking at forecasts would be to kind of add them on a timeline. So then it paints a really clear picture of when it is best to focus on one or the other. And, again, this is based on what we hear from consultancies, agencies, and naturally it is generalization, but, there are definitely patterns here that make sense and are worth kind of considering. So your kind of short term, first of all, is usually covered with some sort of contracted work, right? Which lets you forecast very accurately based on your project timelines, milestones, when you're planning on delivering some big chunks of work, etc., right? By your resource allocations, of course. And yeah, you have fairly accurate and solid data for your forecast. So if we take a step further, your kind of sales pipeline also holds a lot of crucial information about revenue generation. I mean, but things are getting a bit more fuzzy here, as you know, not all of the deals happen, right? And we need to factor in probabilities. We need to be good at probabilities. And you know, we need to distribute the probable revenues over time as well, right? To really have a clear picture, because like no deal will happen in a single day if we think about when the revenue is going to be earned, right? And yeah, of course, we need to resort to a more top-down approach, like when we run out of data, as previously mentioned already. And you know, like usually we see that this happens around 6-month mark. After that, things get just very, I mean, you like you can't be too confident in predicting what's going on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever had an example where a client came to us and said, "Hey, you want to start a project in 6 months' time?" It's normally, "We need it by yesterday." But I mean, like obviously, when we're looking at something, you know, like this, it all sounds, you know, so reasonable, makes so much sense. We get our top-down projections, we combine them with our bottom-up projections. You know, we get this lovely, you know, forecast spanning over, you know, the next year or so. But how does this actually play out in practice? Like, how easy is it to get all of this data? What's involved in maintaining it? What kind of resources do you need? Let's explore some of the challenges involved here.
Yeah, so sure, like there are of course some, let's say, common areas of difficulty, and like based on the conversations, you know, we've had with clients, I think like the first one I'd like to definitely highlight is kind of the act of consolidating all of the data in a single report, because you know that is quite important if you want to have that comprehensive, holistic overview of your revenues. And putting together a report like this can be very time consuming, right? Especially if you've kind of opted to include as much data as possible in it, to get it really accurate, right? Because a lot of data usually means very accurate. And you know, that's why I've seen many businesses kind of just opt for a much simpler approach, and therefore a less accurate approach, just to have a process that is working, right? It might not be a perfect process, but it's still like vastly better than not having nothing at all. And you know, if you're kind of sales software and your project management software are in different kind of systems or domains, I mean, it adds another layer of friction and complexity to the process. Like someone needs to somehow like add all of this together in a single report, so it'd be kind of possible to analyze this, right? Yeah, and yeah, another kind of, you know, like area of difficulties has to do with kind of predicting whether your sales actually happen or not, right? So ultimately, I mean, you should rely on some sort of probabilities to estimate on, you know, how likely it is that a deal A or deal B is going to be won. And I mean, if you're relying on that sort of percentage in your calculations, I mean, it would be crucial to get that right. And it usually takes some time and some sort of like retrospective analysis. And that's why you need to have really good data and like some sort of tools at hand to make that possible, right? Yeah. And the third one, of course, I mean, there are a lot of people involved in the process, right? So like think about every type of producer, type of person, or project management person or salesperson in your organization, kind of like they all report on the probable outcomes in their respective areas. And imagine if they're doing this at least kind of like, I don't know, weekly, and then you have that kind of finance person trying to consolidate all of that insight and ultimately kind of trust that data enough to base some decisions off it. So it can get tricky and overwhelming quite quickly, right? And you know, the data feeding to the forecast keeps changing. You know, there are always delays in the sales phase, for example, in ongoing projects as well. And you know, it's a turbulent environment, especially, you know, like for services businesses. And you know, keeping everyone in the loop and like it can be a pain. It can be a considerable effort.
Yeah.
Why you would just resort to a simpler approach that might not yield the same kind of results, right?
I mean, I can definitely relate to these challenges. I have tried to manage all of this with multiple project managers, multiple spreadsheets that would be out of date by, the very next day because all the data was being manually input from different sources rather than feeding in real time, and it was a nightmare. And like, don't get me wrong, I love a spreadsheet. Like, Xander, I am secretly hoping you're going to get me a mug that says I heart spreadsheets. I use them to plan my holidays. However, like they're great for high level stuff, they're great for abstract stuff. They're not good for, manipulating masses of constantly changing data. And like doing proper bottom up forecasting is just made so much easier when you have a dedicated work management platform.
Yeah, a work management platform. So for those, I mean, who are not Scoro's clients, I guess let's take a quick moment to kind of define what we mean by work management software. So yeah, it's kind of a platform that takes all of your kind of key business processes, right? From managing your client relationships, your lead database, to kind of managing your projects, logging time, raising invoices, all of that. And ultimately, like by having those like central processes in a single system, you start getting really good reporting, right, on your utilization, on your kind of profitability, and ultimately you'll just end up saving a lot of time and having like really in-depth kind of insights into your business as a whole, right? But yeah, Helen, do you know about any good work management platforms?
Oh, I
Do you
wonder.
happen to
I
know? Oh
wonder.
yeah.
So, I mean, Scoro springs to mind. And, I can obviously speak about this not from the perspective of now just working for Scoro, but actually having used Scoro. Scoro is a work management platform that is designed around the needs of agencies and consultancies. And I am delighted to say that we have just launched our new revenue forecasting and reporting feature. And I know that we have a lot of existing Scoro clients on this call today. So you may well have already seen it in the latest update to your Scoro site. And how it works is it takes all of the data from your sales pipeline. So all of the deals you expect to win, and it combines this with all of the project work that you've actually planned out. So the deals that you have won. And this gives you your bottom up month by month view of your revenue forecast. And it also shows you your previous months of earned revenue. And that, as we discussed earlier, is key information that can help feed into your longer term top down forecasts.
Yes, and we're all about saving time for our clients and businesses, right? So this report is naturally kind of automatically generated on all the work that you're already doing inside Scoro. So kind of every single quote that you create in Scoro, which you're using as the basis to kind of estimate the time and work for potential projects, feeds already into the kind of revenue report or the pipeline forecast, and all the kind of work project managers do to kind of plan out their work for team members over the months and future periods also feeds into your kind of project revenue forecast already. So the kind of sales part and the ongoing one project part get nicely married together and consolidated into the single report that would kind of hopefully like provide a lot of that value that we kind of today discussed about.
Now, we did not have this when I was a customer of Scoro. We did not have this feature. It's only just launched. And for me, it was the missing gap. And I used to have, as I discussed, to plan out all of this in spreadsheets. And all of these spreadsheets fed into a master spreadsheet, which is called the R&R spreadsheet. Now, this is kind of ironic because R&R for us stood for resource and revenue. But actually, R&R normally stands for rest and recuperation. Let me tell you, The blood, sweat, and tears that went into maintaining this spreadsheet was the very opposite of rest and recuperation. So, Sander, why haven't you built this earlier?
But we did focus on a number of cool features last year, and
True.
a lot of new capabilities, right? But from the moment like we laid our eyes on the problem of forecasting, it became apparent quickly that it was something our clients really needed, and that a lot of them were already doing in some ways or forms, right? But I mean, the report is here now, it works, and so I hope you can forgive us.
Of course I do. And like honestly, it is so rewarding. I'm just so excited to demo this new report with my clients. Especially when they're already creating their quotes in Scoro. Their project managers are already planning out the project work in Scoro. This report is automatically generated, like with no extra effort. It basically automates your bottom-up forecasting, and yeah, just getting to be the person to tell my clients about this and see their eyes light up. And oh my goodness, see how happy the finance people are as well. It's like Christmas come early. Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm.
Cool. So how are we doing on time? We are 3/4 of the way through, so we've got just a short amount of time left. Let us dive into the Q&A section and just see what questions have been asked. Bear with. Okay, so one of the questions I can see is where are the numbers in the revenue report on coming from? So I'm assuming this is in relation to Scoro's revenue report that we've just been discussing. Xander, do you want to take this one?
Oh yeah, sure. So as I think I briefly mentioned, but the kind of like the report has two main sources. So first off, it's the pipeline, and more specifically the quotes that make up the pipeline. And in a very similar way to how we just talked about it, the quotes themselves get periodized and weighted to kind of paint an accurate picture of your timelines, right? And the other kind of data source is the ongoing one projects, right? So where the kind of timing and duration of your tasks determines, like the revenues you're likely going to earn that at a future period. And of course, this takes along the outsourced costs. So like without getting too technical, right? We have this like external cost management part in the score as well. So if you have some scheduled bills, for example, the revenue is generated based off that as well. So yeah, it's really like an realization of the kind of bottom-up approach we discussed earlier on. The revenue report, I mean, it's important to mention that it's not based on invoices, right? So we're reporting on future earned revenues, and for the reasons we discussed earlier, that we really see a huge benefit of doing that, especially for service companies. Of course, there are like invoice-based, meaning like cash flow-based reports in Scoro as well. Just yeah, the new kind of forecasting report is very much, let's say, an operational, very much related to your resources and how you planned on kind of yeah, like distributing resources in various projects.
And just going back to a point that you made earlier that I think is really worth emphasizing, Xander, the quoted pipeline, the revenue is distributed over a period of months. It's not just all shown in one month. You're
Yeah.
able to say, okay, we've got this 100 grand, quote, but actually it's going to be delivered over 12 months. And this is going to be the split over these 12 months, because that is just, so important to be able to reflect in that quoting stage. And of course, do remember that we have our deeper dive demo on Scoro's revenue report coming up. That is on Tuesday, the 13th of February at 3 p.m. And I can see that there is a link. Some of the questions have been answered already in the Q&A tab. So if anyone wants to get the link to register for that webinar, there's the link in the answer to that question. We'll also send it out in the follow-up one as well. And I'm just looking through the other questions now and just seeing if there's any answered ones that are worth kind of elaborating on. Most of them have been answered already by our busy Scoro team in the background. Just also having a look to see if we've got any more open questions. Okay.
I think there's one that sounds interesting. So are there plans to have a revenue forecasting, including pipeline forecasting, flow into resource planning in the planner in Scoro? So that is an interesting one because very close to my heart, this topic, right? As you know, we're currently creating this new way to plan your resources in Scoro. So you will hear about this quite soon in the following months. And of course, going forward from that, I mean, the idea here is that you have your pipeline, you have your initial deals scoped out, right? And you already know what is the kind of probable kind of resource need for those deals, right? And so we would like in the future, definitely, it's an idea worth considering, and it's like something that sounds to my eyes, my ears, to be really valuable is to immediately get an understanding based on your pipeline what this would mean to your resource plans, right? And so this might mean the utilization report, this might mean the planner. So not sure on the details on that yet, but definitely kind of merging the whole revenue side with the resource planning side will definitely be a strong focus area for us, because as you heard throughout the presentation, the connection between them is super strong. So yeah, you can definitely expect some updates in the resourcing planning part first, but then after that, yeah, definitely as we have those kind of two two areas on a really good level, then hopefully some nice merging of those as well.
Fab. There are maybe a couple of other outstanding questions that we haven't answered quite yet. Some of these might require slightly kind of more involved answers. So we will certainly get back to you if we hadn't had a chance to answer your question. We will certainly kind of follow up afterwards. So I can see Mandy, Chris, Amy, Diana, you've all asked some questions, and we will be getting back to you. There may be one on that we could have time for on how can we forecast costs and profits in Scoro?
Yeah, this is again something that we will start working on in the coming months. As of course, revenue is the main thing, right? But as you have all of this stuff in a single system, every time entry actually means cost as well, right? And every planned task in the future means potential cost, right? So this is an area that we are looking to invest in as well, to kind of improve the way that based on the let's say tasks you have in a project that haven't been completed yet, that these will drive the cost side of things. So ultimately, you would know at every point in time that, okay, this project or that project is going to be profitable or not, and to give you that sort of early warning into the kind of probable outcomes of your projects. And I mean, in the end, yeah, I mean, we have the tools at hand, and I think you can expect some updates on this during this year already.
Amazing. Watch this space, folks. So I'm conscious of time. We've got 5 minutes left, so we'll need to wrap up there. And remember, you can have a look at the Q&A tab to get the link to the next webinar, which will be a deep dive on the revenue forecasting tool in Scoro specifically, as well as answers to the questions that other people have asked, which may well be questions that you had as well. Right, so shall we move on to the concluding points, Sander?
Yes, I think we can. And yeah, so just I think you all have your own takeaways, but like we rounded up a couple on our end, and I think yeah, like the first thing really is that kind of forecasting is more important for like more than the most obvious reasons, right? So of course, understanding your future financial situation of budgets is important, but it also informs your resourcing needs, kind of highlights the all sorts of fluctuations, and you know, gives you the basis or the information that you can adapt your strategies before those situations become like problems, right? And yeah, again, the most robust way of forecasting is to combine the approaches, like the top-down and the bottom-up approach. And yeah, I mean, setting projections and targets over kind of longer time frames that are then informed by past data. And you know, combining that with looking at your actual data for one work and potential work, you know, it really gives you a good reality check, and like these kind of longer aspirational goals as well in a single view, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like a work management software will make a huge difference to the ease and speed of forecasting your revenues in real time. So yeah, it takes a lot of effort to kind of maintain a bottom-up approach, as we already talked about, right? I mean, especially if you're using some manual methods, right? But like if you chose to use a dedicated tool for that, it could make, you know, things that might seem impossible to kind of maintain quite possible and very valuable, let's say, for your business.
Amazing. We will finish up with a very, very quick final poll. So shortly, you will see a pop up on your screen, and we would love to know after today's webinar, do you intend to review the way that you forecast revenue? So there are 4 options, anything from it needing a complete overhaul, making some tweaks, possibly, but not sure where to start, through to it being as realistic as it can get. So we'll wait for just a little while so everyone has a chance to make their choice. Okay, and 3, 2, 1. All right, so I can see the vast majority of people are kind of in the second camp, so looking to make some tweaks as a result of today. Some people who feel that it needs a complete overhaul, and I'm very pleased to see that there is, you know, one person in this list who, you know, is happy that they are confident with their forecast. I'm glad today has given you that reassurance that you are set for success in 2024. And always remember that we here at Scoro are on hand to help you. So for anyone who does need assistance, specifically with how Scoro can help in this context, this is what we are here for. So that is pretty much it. Remember that we have our demo coming up on Tuesday, the 13th of February, 3 p.m. GMT. And we will send you the link in the follow-up email along with the recording to this meeting. And if there are any questions that we haven't been able to answer from the Q&A tab, we'll follow up separately. And I think that is pretty much it for now. So
Yes, well, and thank you from my side as well. So, and thank you for the questions, and I'm really optimistic at looking at the poll results that people are kind of thinking about you know, overhauling their forecasting or at least tweaking it to some extent. So yeah, but yeah, it was great fun, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.